what I'm trying to say is I'm extremely proud and humbled to be able to work in healthcare because I know at the end of the day, this serves a human being for a better life.
Welcome to a brand new episode of our podcast, Human and AI, Mind, Machines, and the Gradient Descent.
Thanks that you tuned in again to listen and to learn. We are Abri and Uli, and our today's awesome mind is Gia Thi Nguyen, Head of Customer Service in Vietnam for Siemens Healthineers. Thi refers to himself as a child of globalization, born between Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi. In short, he strives on the interface between AI and sales and aims to run things smoother.
May the force be with us, at least for this episode. But enough said, you know what? Let's dive right into the views of Thi on AI.
So Thi, welcome. How are you and where do we catch you today?
Hi, thanks for having me. Well, you catch me today at home. It's a Friday evening here in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. It's scorching hot, but it's hot pretty much every day.
So let us get a quick check. So what would you choose? Either Luke Skywalker or Han Solo?
Han Solo.
Coffee or tea?
Both. Coffee with tea.
Coffee with tea. Cat or dog?
Right now, dog.
Dog. And last but not least, AI or human?
Trick question. Of course, always human, but AI is also a human thing for the time being.
So, Thi, as a Han Solo, you choose Han Solo over Luke Skywalker. What? You are the soldier, right? You see us as a cowboy, huh? The cowboy in the galaxy, I guess, if you choose Han Solo instead of the marvelous, good-looking Luke Skywalker, which you could also represent, right? Thi, I know you for great experiences we had in the lab doing project together. But, and also most recently as having some conversations also online, right? You had a great podcast, what it means embracing change, what it means actually, in times of COVID and being in quarantine, right? But maybe for the folks out there, can you describe who are you? What's your journey, which is also marvelous, right? And how you end up in a place like Siemens?
Well, let's just talk a little bit about the child of globalization first and then how I ended up in Siemens. So I was born and raised in Berlin, Germany by Vietnamese parents. At that time, there were really no Vietnamese around, not many. Yeah, the only other Vietnamese in school I've ever met was actually my older brother. Yeah. And I went to the US at age 16 and I did a year there and I just stayed there and I studied. So for me, I was really truly a child of globalization because after my studies, in the US, I started to work in Siemens. And I started in IT. After 6 years and 3 countries later, I worked in my first 6 countries in the UK, in Czech Republic, and then 3 years in Vietnam. So I moved from CIO to a CFO position. And then I did another tour in Spain, where I was 4 years. And when returning in 2014, I came back to Siemens in Germany in the headquarters, worked there in sales back office operations in global programs, being basically Mr. Offer to Order, Order to Cash for Siemens Digital Industries. And since the last 2 months, I joined Siemens Healthineers, and I'm very proud to be able to be the head of customer service in Siemens Healthineers, Vietnam. So that, in short, is my different life. And yeah, many people always ask me, how do you come from IT to finance to digitalization topics and then now to customer service? And it's always the same answer. It's about the journey.
Not crazy. Yes, actually, that's the beauty somehow. Also, in working in a large corporation, right? It doesn't matter which one actually, but it's the beauty is having these distributions of different opportunities to embrace your own change, right? And say like, you know what, it's time for a new adventure, and maybe also in different countries, and you experience quite a lot, right? I think I guess you're challenging not only your own, but also the flexibility and agility of your family, isn't it? Is
Absolutely.
always where backing up, or is, let's say, guiding with you, or being on the road with you? Isn't it that challenging as well?
Absolutely. And when I was moving to Spain in 2010, my wife was 5 months pregnant. I didn't speak my wife neither. We don't speak any word Spanish at that time. And I really had already 4 assignments abroad by that time. So I really thought, wow, that's crazy. Nothing, nothing compared to now in COVID times to go from Germany to Vietnam, and now with the kid as well. And as she had her 10th birthday in the hotel quarantine. So yes, that's a really crazy time. So apparently I can always keep challenging myself on crazy situations.
And you were just telling us about different transformations, like personal transformations. But since you're also very expert about digitalization, about digital transformations, who would you say drives digital transformation in large corporations? Is it the CEO or rather the CTO? Or maybe even another very well-known fella? Is it maybe COVID-19?
Well, I think in terms of the reality of what we have seen in the past months, definitely COVID-19 was a catalyst which enabled certain digital transformation efforts to be pushed. And I'm not talking about us using now a video conferencing or working from home. These are the really visible aspects. But I think what drives the digital transformation due to COVID is also to actually understand that we are often using the wrong language. Work from home is not work from home. It's work from anywhere. And when people say, "Oh, sometimes I actually would like to go to the office," that what they actually mean is, "I would love to see my colleagues again," right? And you can meet your colleagues, whether it's in design, working areas, or just around the bar, So yes, it has driven a lot. But if we didn't have COVID-19, I would answer the question, who drives digital transformation? Honestly, I don't know. But who should do it? I would say it's everyone. Yeah, I think everyone should be driving digital transformation, because setting the tone is definitely a topic for the management. So setting the context is always top down. But I think that we should also have the courage to allow the content bottom up then. So when it comes to the messaging context, meaning resources, time, trust, top down. When it comes to content, bottom up, and then you will always get it much quicker, better quality with less resources, if you can keep it. Yeah, but if you do top down content, I've seen it, unfortunately, many times it doesn't work that well. Yeah.
Another aspect then, because if you're saying like that we people should drive digital transformation, is it then we people that define the technology, or is technology rather defining us?
Quite honestly, let me be a little bit provoking here. I think alone this question, or the putting the words together in this way, people, technology, the problem is not whether it's people or technology. The problem is actually the word in the middle. It's a or. And because that question is put in such way, you can only answer that way, because the worst thing to do, like in the podcast, would be to say that's a bad question, right? So I don't say that's a bad question at all. Don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to say is that the wording for me is a little bit too limiting. And think about it like this. Should you eat oranges or broccoli? Well, both are healthy, right? But if you only eat broccoli and oranges, which are both healthy, you also die. So what I'm trying to say here is that the answer is not just to replace the or with and, but it's also and, not only. And I think, therefore, when we talk about people or technology, we must understand that all the technology up to today, which is in applicable use cases, is still created by people. So for me, technology is a kind of art form of humanity. It's a proof of what we are capable of doing. So I don't think of technology as an inhuman thing.
All right. True. Alexa, remind me no Boolean question anymore. Okay. Let's talk about AI, right? Let's think about AI in sales, right? So AI is obviously also the machine learning and data-driven insights, right? Boosts obviously also in sales, right? Lead volumes, close rates, sales performance, right? So a lot of aspects is where technology is being pushed to automate or to augmentate or to support somehow the sales process, right? Would you say this results already pretty much sure in corporate somehow incentives like revenues, that what portion of machine learning can be somehow substantiated towards AI driven decision makers and sales process? And maybe because you with your broad experience, right, can you somehow share some use cases where you are driving or affiliated or you're excited about within the corporation over the last year you want to share with us?
Well, of course, one specific use case I can definitely share is our project, and I hope it's still ongoing when I've moved from my previous position as the head of Operation Excellence of Siemens Digital Industries, where we have used machine learning or AI in our pricing context. And basically, it is by the use of this technology, we want to derive the highest price a customer is willing to pay. And of course, we have a lot of guidelines and frameworks and knowledge and assumptions. But at the end of the day, there are certain things that the applied technology can do much better. And whether we want that the AI is deciding for us or not is actually not so important at this stage, but it's much more important that we are utilizing AI to make the decision process better. So it's not here to replace any humans, like a lot of the people think like AI will tarnish so many different jobs. Some job categories probably yes, but in our environment of sales, that's definitely not the reason or the purpose of why we want to apply AI, but it's really to serve our salespeople to make better decisions and also to venture in areas where a salesperson would only be able to opportunistically venture. But now, with the power of technology, we can even address, let's say, the long tail of decisions which often were unfortunately not addressed before, but now they can be. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. So if we're talking, because you said digital technologies and machine learning and data driven, right? If we follow the rationale, somehow being a more digital company, right? Then it's mostly driven by processes, right? This is also an area where you worked heavily, right? Process, intelligence and process automation and those kinds of aspects. So, and what we do is effectively, right? You look at the given process, see what of this process is already digitized, what is not yet digitized, and maybe should be embraced to be somehow, what's the digital pendant on that? And then you look somehow for where's the biggest pain in this process and can we somehow use or make use of technology to support people in, making this process more automatic, more efficient, gain in efficiency, right? This is how you somehow gain efficiency in a corporation. But how do you identify, it's not easy processes that we have, right? How do you identify which of the process are a huge pain for the corporation or for the customers? How do you assess that? Do you have any, I don't know, blueprint, any blue box or a structured manner?
Well, definitely there's not a blueprint, or if there's a blueprint, it's actually always being written and rewritten as we speak. But I think maybe that is one part of my bliss being in the company for nearly now 2 decades in 5 countries all around the world in different functions, that I have been able to see a lot of this process pain. I really actually started 2002 as a EDI analyst writing code so that order managers didn't have to do clickety-clack on the keyboard, right? And 16 years later, I'm the global head of offer to order to cash, looking at 70 million line items across Siemens AG, 250 billion euros volume, transactional volume, around 400 million activities, and each activity having around 160 data points. That's a lot of data. And I said, wow, if I had that in 2002, my goodness, how much could I have actually changed? But I'm not looking backwards in some nostalgia, but I'm looking forward. And therefore, we have been able to successfully drive with technology things which we have been living for literally over 2 decades. And it is also true, and you will always hear me saying that we need to have the courage to actually listen to people who go through that pain firsthand and also give them the trust and the ability to get rid of that pain. And they don't do that for their own experience, but they are like me thinking, how many people can they actually help by doing that other people don't have to go through this painful experience themselves. In other words, if I can share something and then somebody else can be my boss in 1-2 years because they know everything like I did, and even surpass me in everything else, I would be so proud. It's like having kids, right? I mean, I would never get mad at my daughter being able to do something much, much better than I was able when I was 10, correct? Maybe people would say, OT, you are such a proud father, you keep it down a little bit. Yeah, but, it's okay to be a proud father. And therefore, when I'm in this corporate environment, having been in many different countries, in different functions, I just want that people don't have to go through that painful experience at times and be able to address even the other things, the new things, the ones I have not yet experienced or encompassed.
Wow, that's a lot of experience and also a great impact being able to make the life easier for so many customers or people. But how does that actually feel for you to be able to automate so many tasks with only a very limited number of people? So millions of tasks and only automating them with 3 people, that sounds insane. How does that feel for you?
Well, first of all, of course, it does feel great, but it wasn't 3 people. The project and the program, when we drove this topic, was really only 3 people. But of course, the real action was the entire organization, whose names we don't always know, to be quite honest, and who had actually no voice before. So technology was a new, let's say, also digital meeting ground to actually show the great work. You have to understand that I don't need to go into any country. We traveled actually in that year around 27, 30 countries, really in just 1 year. And I don't need to tell any country, hey, we have a process improvement project going on. No, they are improving the processes every single day. The only thing is my job is to enable them that they can do what they do daily in a much more impactful way by the use of technology. And the secret sauce, of course, is themselves, the people around it. So yes, it makes us very proud because we all know that we can't change the past of us having to do the clickety-clack part with the mouse and the keyboard. And nobody in the countries, when we were talking with them, were afraid that they would make themselves obsolete or redundant, because they know that nobody really wants to do mundane and stupid work, so to speak, or non-value creating work. And I think this is really, really important. I think many times what I noticed also is there's a certain, I wouldn't say distrust, but I think a certain opinion that we shouldn't do this because people will do that. They will sabotage, they will block, but they don't. And maybe the people who think like that, they would do it themselves. But honestly speaking, the people in the so-called trenches, they don't. And I think that's really a very important thing.
That's an interesting, right? So what does it mean for leadership there, right? Speaking on leadership in the age of AI, right? What does it mean? How do you empower that, right? We are talking about the distributed organization, right? Lead country, not yet anymore, but, somehow, you have working colleagues anyway, not only, within COVID times, but, within, traditional international corporations too, right? Towards different countries, different size. Like you demand and you definitely need to buy in basically, and the intrinsic motivation of the colleagues, right? Shaping, as you said it out, right? In the beginning, right? It's the people and it's us all together, shifting and moving and inventing, reinventing and optimizing, right? What's your stake on leadership? What are the key essential building blocks leaders of tomorrow and today maybe already need to have in order to maneuver in the ship of bit of uncertainty as well?
Well, first of all, if I can quote Simon Sinek, leadership is not about the position, at a certain level up in the hierarchy, but leadership is really about everyone can be a leader. And there's also this very famous video about a guy dancing crazily and then another person follows, and all of these things. And then in a minute at this festival, everyone is just dancing like crazy. And I think this is really that, yes, we think of leadership like, I don't know, Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs. Let's take the example of Steve Jobs and Apple. But Steve Jobs would have not been so famous and so successful if he didn't have people like Steve Wozniak. So I think that actually the real leaders often are the first followers who have the courage to actually go along the otherwise crazy person, because this kind of leadership, this courage, makes a crazy person acceptable. And then later, everyone will say, I was crazy not to follow them. So therefore, for me, that is leadership, when you have the courage, the curiosity to learn. And if you boil it down, it's exactly what defines us as humans. This is what we have always been better than the machines, always are better and always will be better into all eternity when it comes to topics like empathy, curiosity, collaboration. Yeah, that's what defines us as humans. Yeah? And so leadership is nothing hard. And trust me, it's so easy to be like me, really. Everyone can be like me, easy. The only thing which probably is just challenging is to be like me every day. When good things happen, when bad things happen, and not to crack down. And it's not because I have some magic blueprint or roadmaps, but I think that I just know where my compass is aligned. And I think this is really, when it comes to leadership, will you speak up, even knowing that in this corporate environment, for example, you will be pushed down into a corner, and you still do it nonetheless? That is the courage sometimes you have to do. And I think Jeff Immelt said that, it's just about breaking the rules every day without getting fired. Yeah, because we always,
I love that. That is what we call bold.
yeah, we always have to push ourselves, because we have to understand anything. Let's take a water bottle. Let's take a chair. Everything which is possible now at some point was impossible. And my two ladies, who I basically kidnapped from their old job, right, who have been doing order management for the majority of their Siemens career, no one told them what was impossible. So they just did it. They just did what the other people thought was impossible, but they were not driven by proving other people I can do the impossible. No, they just wanted to make other people's lives better. And that's all what's about. And that is true leadership. Yeah. And I hope that we will have an organization that will also allow these people to develop, that they can also scale the past successes onto other people, and that we all share on it. Yeah? That's what I'm looking for. And I think we still have too much, and I'm not talking about meritocracy or something like that, but we still have a system where we are actually promoting people still based on seniority, just by the number of years people are in the company. And that's something really I hope to see in a different way. And we do have actually some examples, but unfortunately they're still very much the exception.
How can you bring by like a culture change like that in a company? Is it only leadership, or are there also other components or aspects that have to change for a company?
It's a very tough, but of course relevant question, because I think there's even a lot of discourse on the meaning of a culture, right? What is culture? And culture eats strategy for breakfast and all of these things. But there's actually a concept of a so-called cultural web, where we say that, if you really want to make change that sticks, not just some temporary change, you have to really actually address 6 different areas, and they're called the myths, symbols, power structures, organizational structures, control systems, and routines and rituals. So if you, for example, and I'm not going to go into all the different kind of aspects, but for example, if you want to have a change in performance, you really need to focus on your control systems and your organizational structures to some extent. And if you want to, for example, create a change in behavior, you really need to focus on your control systems, very much on your organizational structures, very much on your power structures, and a little bit on your routines and rituals, on your myths and your symbols. But if you really want to change culture, you have to do all of it, all what I mentioned just now. All of these 6 things must be addressed. You need to have the myths, about these 3 renegade people traveling around the world creating some change. You need to have the symbols, like that digital fit rate they created. You need to have the change of power structures, where I was suddenly allowed to have actually employees in Spain, in Sweden, and my team was actually 50-50 now outside of the headquarter. That's also part of organizational structure. And the control system really was actually very loose. So we didn't have a control system, but we were, let's say, very much aligned on the same compass. Yeah? And so in order to really drive cultural change, I think it is very important to understand that it is always a marathon. But on the other hand, I also want to say one thing which we always see, that we talk always about change management is very important, and in a project change management is important. But my question is, if change is the only constant in life, why do we then only have change managers, let's say, during some projects? And why do we have to talk so much about it? Because it apparently seems that we are actually not very good at it at all. And that is actually something what I find surprising, because you could think that if you hit the wall 10 times, that you get a little bit smarter and try to find some other ways. No, let me try to do it an 11th time, So when it comes to this cultural change, I think we need to have also a different way on how we address change, generally speaking, and with a much more positive outlook.
Thank you very much. So maybe let's now move back. Like, that was like super inspiring. But what I would be like super interested is if you have a look back to the last years. So what would you recognize as the major breakthroughs in the field of AI, especially with regards to industrial AI?
Well, for me, honestly speaking, one of the major breakthrough in AI are, of course, cat picture recognition. No, I'm just kidding. For me, particularly, it's actually like AlphaGo. I thought that was really, really interesting, because you had Deep Blue with Gary Kasparov a couple of years back, right? And then, but actually, chess is not as complex as is Go. But for me, there are so many different applications of AI which I find really mind-blowing, when it comes to machines talking to machines, cyber physical systems, where, for example, preventive maintenance use cases are there, and the machine tells the other machine, hey, can you please take over for a couple of minutes, because I'm going to order myself a service engineer for a replacement of a spare part, which I, by the way, ordered myself in the SAP system, things like that. It's really cool. But what terrifies me to some extent is also that, we have self-driving cars very soon, but there are so many places in the world where people cannot even afford a car. They don't even have roads to drive on with. Yeah, so I would really love to see more application and use cases also for let's call it, it's already overused, I'm sorry for that, for the human good. I also think that actually our use case in the past with the dynamic pricing in the sales process also was actually pretty good. Well, it's a major breakthrough. No, probably not.
You're also embracing somehow responsibilities, right? It seems to be the red line throughout the conversation, actually. So, like, what's the responsibility? What's the human factor in this corporate house and these processes, right? And you put also is quite some aspect on sustainability. You mentioned right away, right? And I've learned not only because you're wearing often some t-shirts indicating that, but also I've learned actually from you about your initiative, which is not in the corporate, right? It's outside, I guess, on your private good, on the Plastic Bank Foundation, which is kind of interesting. I never heard it before, actually. I knew about the problem, but I never heard it before. But maybe can you share with the audience also, right? How did you end up, and what drives you and the rationale behind the idea of exposing towards the plastic bank?
Yes, so it's actually quite easy to explain. If you're in the kitchen, and the sink is overflowing with water, all the water is now on the floor, you're not gonna get a bucket and a mop to mop the water into the bucket. The first thing you do is to turn off the tap. And fishing out plastic from the oceans, which is a horrible thing, is also very useless because every minute there's so much plastic garbage, new garbage in the ocean, you can't really fish it out. So the thing is, we need to understand that plastic in the ocean is not a plastic problem, it's a human problem, and it is really related to poverty. Because 80% of all the plastic which goes into the ocean comes from impoverished places. And these people do not have the luxury to think about recycling or waste management or anything because they don't even know where to get the next meal. So therefore, it is very important to understand that it is driven by poverty. And if you can get rid of that poverty, then you can also tackle the plastic problem. So the plastic bank basically supports the collection of plastic. In the collection center, it's weighed and measured and cleaned up. And then the people will get basically money for it. And it's actually, by the way, also pretty cool technology behind it. It's a Hyperledger blockchain sponsored by IBM. And so people receive a new identity, a new self-worth. And this is something which the founder and CEO, David Katz, has shared with me is when it comes to eliminating poverty, it basically means how much further into the future with a positive outlook can a person look. So if you have a drug addict who is really looking for his next shot, or a very poor person looking for his next meal, or me trying to think about the next vacation, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they can look into decades into the future because that's the wealth. And if you can change that the person who's worried about making ends meet of next week and then thinking about actually sending the kids to school, that means that poverty has been eliminated. And therefore, to actually make it very simple, I think that any business idea or product or service, if that is not needed anymore, that's a good day. What I'm trying to say is I'm extremely proud and humbled to be able to work in healthcare because I know at the end of the day, this serves a human being for a better life. And if I don't have to sell any CTs or MRs anymore because we have cured cancer and all the other diseases, it's a good day to become bankrupt. So that's also the thing about plastic. If one day there is no plastic to be collected and then to create a new value for it, that would be a good day. But unfortunately, it's not happening yet. But nonetheless, we are working on it. We give plastic a new life. And also, it is definitely this whole plastic shaming is totally wrong. Yeah? So it is really about giving plastic a new value. You would not throw away a bottle of plastic onto the streets if it was worth $10. You wouldn't do it. You would collect it. And that's the thing. Yeah, yes, I don't like virgin plastic because there's enough plastic already around on this earth. But on the other hand, we need to understand that plastic is really a field of diamonds. And we just need to grab them to give it a new life. Yeah.
Thank you very much, team. Like a look on the watch reveals that we're already at the end of this very, very inspiring and insightful session. But before we get to our closing game, I also wanted to ask you if you have any book recommendation or online education courses for the people out there to get involved and started in the areas of AI and sales, sustainability, or entrepreneurial spirit? Do you have any recommendations there?
Well, I guess it's also related to AI. I think that Dr. Kai-Fu Lee's book, AI Superpowers, is a very, very interesting book. Everyone should have a look at when it comes to AI. Maybe also The End of Work by Daniel Süskind is also quite interesting. It's more on the economical, social side. But honestly, a book recommendation I can just bring on at the moment is from Rutger Bregman as Humankind. I think that's actually the best book at the moment. People should read. Spoiler alert, humans are good. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So before we call it a day, we have a small game prepared for you. We do it with every podcast guest. So let me give you for the closing a couple of sentence starter, and then you will just finish. Are you ready, T?
Always.
Perfect. So Siemens is
Not innovation for business, but ingenuity for life.
okay. At the final frontier is
A new hope.
Sure. What else, right? What else?
love it. Innovation is
Innovation is important. Exclamation point.
right. I agree. My favorite quote is
My favorite quote. Lots of quotes. At the moment, the value of you is not what you know, but what you share, by Ginny Rometty.
lovely. And last but not least, my personal superpower is
Like Nick Fury, having no superpowers, but bringing the right superheroes together.
Awesome. T, thanks so much, right? Not only, spending the time with us here, but being 100% you. I love it. And folks out there, stay tuned. There's so much to come. Stay bold, committed, and open-minded, and hear you at the next Siemens AI Lab podcast. Thanks, T.